Hello and welcome, everybody. We are pleased to have you joining us today for our session, which we're going to focus on how to get the most out of your MBA experience. I am going to jump in and share my screen with you. Let me just double check. Wendy, are you able to see that?
I am.
All right. Thank you for confirming that. So we are really pleased to join you today. My name is Michael Malone, and I am joined today by my colleague, Wendy Metter. And we're going to spend about an hour with you talking a bit about how to get the most from the time that you're going to spend in an MBA program during your MBA experience. Just a bit about Fortuna Admissions. We are a group of former admissions directors and senior team members from top business schools around the world. You are welcome to contact us for a free consultation if you're thinking about business school and you want to see if working with somebody from Fortuna might help to decrease your anxiety, help increase your chances of admission. We would love to talk with you. So if you are interested in that, feel free to contact us at www.fortunaadmissions.com. One other word for folks who are joining us today is if you have questions, we would love for you to use the Q&A feature. And toward the end of our program today, Wendy and I will make sure that we make time to answer the questions that you have about the MBA experience and how you can think about it. So a little bit about us. Wendy, I'd love for you to tell everybody a little bit about yourself. And could you tell, you are such an avid reader, could you tell folks one book that is like your favorite business book?
Absolutely. Okay, so I'll answer the second question first. My favorite business book is one that I recommend that you all read, and it's called How to Wash a Chicken, which is a provocative provocative title. It's written by Professor Tim Calkins, who's a marketing professor, guru marketing guy. And it's mastering the business presentation. And I recommend that all of you read it because it will help you with business school and it will help you in your career going forward. So it's a delightful read. I am formerly the Associate Director of Student Life at Kellogg. I left there a little bit less than a year ago, and I oversaw student activities, clubs, conferences, new student orientation, community engagement, wore lots of different hats. And the other thing that I did, which I'm continuing to do in my private practice, is worked with the significant others of students who were transitioning to a new location and needing to figure out jobs and life and sort of entry into a new space. And Michael, what about you? What's your favorite book? And tell us about your background.
You bet. So sort of a new favorite book, one that I had always really appreciated by Linda Hill, called Becoming a Manager from a number of years ago. It was such a great work in terms of taking folks who were new to management, where they've been really good on the line, but had never managed before, giving some very practical how-to suggestions for making that transition and how to look after your staff. But more recently, concurrent with some of the work that Wendy Wood at USC has done, and a number of other business school professors have done around choice and decision making. As I recently took a look at Atomic Habits from James Clear, and it was a very interesting read in terms of how to identify things that you want to become habits and how you modify your own behavior and how you connect it to other things that you're already doing in your life, so that it doesn't seem so onerous. So
that sounds like a great one, Michael.
It was really interesting. I was skeptical going in, as I often am with many books. I felt like this was going to be a little self-helpy and guru-y, and it actually wasn't. It was pretty accessible and pretty straightforward, so I enjoyed it. So by way of background, I've worked with MBAs in a bunch of different capacities, I started out doing some business development stuff, creating opportunities and connecting non-banking, non-consulting, non-CPG MBAs with roles in healthcare, pharma, real estate, not-for-profit, green business, a whole host of things. I've done career management, both full-time with the full-time MBA program at Columbia, overseeing career ed and advising. And then I had the good fortune to actually work with Wendy at Kellogg, where I came in to oversee the Career Management Center at Kellogg. So it gave me the opportunity to work with full-time, part-time executive MBAs and alumni of the three programs. And just a tremendous experience, amazing team, and great culture. And then I was asked to come back to Columbia, where I actually oversaw, as the associate dean, I oversaw the MBA, EMBA, MS, and PhD programs during the past 7 years. And again, it enabled me to get touch points by overseeing the program offices of student affairs and academic advising, overseeing admissions and financial aid for all of those programs. So it gave me a little bit more breadth and depth in terms of the business school experience for a variety of different students. And my hope is that with the vast experience that Wendy has at Kellogg and what I have from both Kellogg and Columbia, that we're able to get you some really good content and answer some of your questions today. So we have a number of things that we're going to spend some time talking with you about, but I want to sort of boil it down to 3 areas that we felt were most important about the MBA experience. We broke it down to 3 areas: academics, community and family, and careers. And part of why we landed on this, folks, is that we felt when we looked, Wendy and I talked for a lot of time before we put this program together about what makes a successful experience and what can derail an experience for an MBA student. And what we concurred on was that if any of these 3 areas, each of them is critically important on their own, but they also have impact on the others. And so if any one of them is out of alignment, it can really pose a challenge for the student going through the MBA experience. So we wanted to focus on these 3 buckets with you today in the hopes that you'll get some ideas and suggestions for their importance, but also how to try to balance them. So let's talk about how to prepare and how to figure out the best way to make good, informed choices. Really, that's a big part of what Wendy and I are invested in, is that you make really good, informed decisions about how to spend your time and your attention and your energy while you're in your MBA experience.
Great. So question, as people think about preparing for their MBA, where should they start, Michael? There's, it can be an overwhelming thought, and I think it would be helpful to have some direction.
Sure, I agree with you. I think that it's helpful to give people a starting point. So one of the things I'm going to ask folks to do is to take 30 seconds, and it's okay if you don't finish it in the 30 seconds, you can go back to it. But I want to give you 30 seconds to write down a 6-word memoir. If it's 7, it's okay. Wendy and I are not going to come after you and check, but we're looking for you to write a 6-word memoir. So what does that mean? A 6-word memoir is a story about your life or what is most important to you. So for example, for me, as someone who has been a senior leader and a coach, and very invested in both institutional and individual outcomes, my 6-word memoir is making people's light bulbs go on. It's focused on helping people along the self-discovery route. It's helping organizations to discover what they're good at and what they can do more of. So that's my 6-word memoir. Wendy, do you have one? Do you have a short description of what you stand for or who you are?
I do. It is, I am a connector to and for us all.
Mm-hmm. That's great. I like that because it's not just a collection of 6 disconnected words. It's a story about who you are in your life. So I think that's what we're asking you to do, is to try to take just a quick moment and write down a 6-word memoir. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that connects to vision and strategy. But let's give you 30 seconds. Go ahead and try your hand at a 6-word memoir. Okay,
Michael, I have a question. How can people
please.
use this to articulate their personal mission? How can they use this memoir, this sort of condensed version of who they are and what they stand for?
Yeah, it's such a great question, Wendy. So here's why the 6-word memoir can be so powerful. Is in order to figure out where you're going, you have to know your starting point and you have to know what you're aiming for. Because if you don't, without that kind of guidance, you're more likely to be very scattershot or to react to just what's in front of you and chase that and not have a sense of consistency or alignment with what's really important to you. And so why the 6-word memoir is hard is because it's 6 words. But why it's valuable is because it's condensed. It's very, very focused. And the hope is that this 6-word memoir reflects something about you that's going to be true no matter what the circumstance, whether you're in business school or in a job or with your family or with colleagues, that this is going to be something that is more true about you and is a good starting point for who you are and hopefully a starting point for where you're headed. It helps you to identify that North Star, that element that's less likely to change. And that gives you a basis of comparison because there will be other decision points where maybe you need to. Having your North Star identified through your 6-word memoir gives you the sense of what might be flexible and what's not. And you're going to continue throughout your MBA journey to reflect on and assess your values and how the way that you spend your time, the way that you choose to be active, how those choices reflect what's important to you, what you value. Starting now is critical because Wendy, you had this great suggestion or this great phrase that I love. Mm-hmm. When you start your MBA program, folks, you are going to be completely immersed. And what you had said is that if you don't start now, you won't be able to see your reflection in the water when you're trying to swim. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what you're going to be doing once you hit the fall and you start your MBA program. Is you're going to be in the water. You can't stop really. You don't have time to step back and reflect. So starting to reflect now is going to be good for you. It's strategic and it helps you to develop that strategy for determining what direction you would like to head and knowing why you're making that choice.
And it will ground you. And being grounded is super important because there's a herd mentality. Herd mentality has taken on a new meaning lately, but the herd mentality at business school is that people start running in one direction and people who don't really want to be running in that direction start running with them. And that can be very destabilizing. And so that's why all of this is really important.
So we really want to encourage you to work with this 6-word memoir as a tool to help you to stay grounded and identify who you are and what's important to you so that you know where you're going. What I'd say is starting now, there are 2 steps that you can take before your MBA program starts that will help you to stay on track. One I'll offer, which is to identify those values that you hold and to figure out and maybe even prioritize which of those values is most important to you and which ones perhaps you can be more flexible on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think one of the things you have to also do is identify accountability partners. So they could be a family member, they could be a significant other, a school colleague, a former work colleague who understands who you are and helps keep you on the track that you want to be on. And I think if you can give some forethought to who you think the best accountability partner would be, or you can identify those people a little bit later, but have discussions with those people before you jump in to the pond, because it will also help you stay with your true north and help you make sure that you're staying true to your values and to what's important to you.
I love that concept, Wendy. I mean, you're so right. You can't undertake the MBA experience or anything else that's of that magnitude. You can't do it by yourself, and you probably shouldn't do it by yourself. You do want folks around you who are going to be acting in your best interest, but give you a really straight story and a good reflection of what they're seeing, and are you staying true to what you said was important to you? And I think that's going to be an important element of the experience.
And one other thing, I think sometimes it's helpful to have somebody outside the MBA bubble to be your accountability partner, because those people have some perspective that people in business school may lose when they're in the pool. So again, it's a great thing that you can do right now. Start thinking about who those people are to you.
Yeah. I think it's such a great suggestion. I think that leads nicely too into our next section, Wendy, where we're going to talk about academics, right?
Right. So what should people do, Michael, to get themselves ready academically for the MBA experience?
So that's a good question, because you have time now. The closer you get to August and September, that time is going to go quickly, and there's going to be so many things fighting for your attention. So I think there are a few things, very concrete steps that we might recommend that you consider at this point. One is thinking about taking exemption exams. If you have a knowledge base, either because of your background, your undergraduate, maybe another master's degree, or because of your work, it gives you a good knowledge base in one or more of the areas that you would be studying in the core of an MBA program, you might think about whether or not you take an exemption exam. A plus, if you choose to exempt, is that it gives you more opportunities to take electives that might be of considerable interest to you. The potential challenge to it is that folks take the core courses with their cohort. So you're developing not only a good knowledge base in the content, but you're also developing good teamwork and good relationships. And if you choose to exempt, you're in fewer core courses with your cohort. So there's not a right or wrong, but it is something to consider whether or not you might choose to and have the opportunity to take an exemption. One note is that if you qualify for an exemption, it doesn't necessarily mean that you must accept that exemption. You may still be able to take that course. It may feel a little bit slower for you if you're really advanced in your knowledge in that content. But there's typically not a requirement that if you test above a certain level that you have to take the exemption.
Yeah, it'll give you a little bit more flexibility, knowing that you have that option.
Yeah, and it really it has the capacity to change the complexion of your MBA program from an academic standpoint. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Another area is if there's an area academically that you feel like you're not as familiar with, that you're going to have to work on in the MBA program, and you are a little anxious about, or you're feeling a little underprepared, you might consider taking some time during this summer and doing an edX course or Khan Academy or some other brush up, just so that you are familiarizing yourself. We used a phrase that you don't want to be building the airplane while it's in the air. And so an area that could be true is, for example, is if you've not worked extensively with Excel. Most MBA programs rely super heavily on Excel. And so knowing it, not just the fundamentals, but knowing it well enough that you're very comfortable doing different kinds of analyses with Excel, doing pivot tables, certainly things along those lines are going to be pretty critical for you. So it may be worth your while over the summer to get familiarized with some of the tools, whether it's Excel or Python or R or Tableau or something like that, that could be a feature of your MBA program and you're not as familiar with it. Might be a good time to consider that. As you're thinking about your programs, the program that you're going to enter, there are some things that you can research now that will help you to make good decisions when you actually get there. So for example, does your school have a flexible curriculum? There are some schools that are known for being super rigid, And then there are other schools that are super well known for having very flexible curriculum. So getting to know how many choices will you be able to make, particularly in your first year, could be helpful to note. Does your school require or even offer a concentration, or is it just a general MBA? Oftentimes, even places that don't have a concentration, if you take a certain number of courses, you can certainly include on your resume that you're really well versed in this. But finding out if there is a major or concentration, and if so, what the requirements are. If your school has a forced curve, if they have a forced distribution of how many A's, B's, C's, D's, and F's, that would be really good information to know. There are a number of MBA programs that have a forced curve as a means of ensuring academic rigor. And you want to know going in how that could affect you, if there are classes where you could be in potential jeopardy, if there are going to be classes that you know you likely will do very well with. It's worth noting that. And then a last element that I would point out, another question, is does your school offer a pass or no credit grading option? Because that can really give you some more choice in terms of if there are no no credit grading options, you can take a class kind of for fun, just to be able to expand boundaries or get exposure to content that you wouldn't otherwise choose if you had to take it for a grade.
Yeah, it's less risky than taking it for a grade, and you also can use it to sort of push yourself outside your comfort zone and take a course that you would be afraid to take otherwise, honestly.
Yeah.
So having started with the MBA mission and the North Star, how does that relate to the academic journey of MBA school? And more particularly, do grades matter?
We get this question a lot, right? We've gotten this before with, in the broad scheme of things, how important are grades? Grades are important in the regard that they are going to be reflections of how well you've mastered the material and how ready you are to be able to use that material to help an employer do what you're there to do. That said, grades may not necessarily be the top priority for some students. They may be, and that's certainly a choice. But because it's unusual for folks to go beyond the MBA, most folks are stopping at the MBA. Really, the goal, I think, is to get as much knowledge from the material as you can. And sometimes that's reflected from grades, and sometimes it's not. So I would say certainly get the most out of your classes, and oftentimes that's reflected with good grades, but not always. I would make knowledge acquisition and your ability to translate the knowledge that you gain in the classroom into practical impact in the marketplace. I think that becomes an even more important priority, particularly coming from an MBA program. I don't know, would you agree with that?
I totally agree with that. I think, with so many people who come to MBA schools are type A and they're used to, acing everything. And that's sort of part of your identity. The MBA experience, in addition to academics, is so much more than that. And so you want to make sure that you're getting the other things that you came to business school out of the experience, in addition to knowledge acquisition. And we'll talk a little bit more about all those other things that, the MBA experience will be for you.
Yeah, that's a great transition too, because we're going to talk next about community. We want to take this out of the classroom and talk a little bit more about what you're doing with your peers, with faculty outside of the classroom, the kinds of things that you're going to be involved with. Wendy, what can you tell folks about being part of an MBA community? And how do you make choices? There's so many choices that people can make. How do you make good choices?
That's a really good question. And I think that's another thing that we're bringing up now, because these are things that you can think about in advance before you jump in. I will say that having lived the MBA experience with students for many, many years, I see people coming in feeling very buttoned up and knowing exactly what they want to do and how they want to engage. And what happens is, no matter how prepared you are, knowing that you can handle and balance a number of things, it's really drinking out of a fire hose. in the first, I would say, first quarter semester of business school, because the array of things that come at you at such an incredible pace, besides the academics and the career stuff, which we'll talk about later, but it's where do I engage in terms of clubs and activities? Developing a network is a huge reason that people want to engage in activities. Being a community, so it's individual connections, it's being part of the overall community, both internally and externally within the community that you're living in. And it can be an overwhelming experience. So again, you want to make sure that you take advantage of these other things, and there is such a myriad of things that your calendars, as busy as you are, as busy professionals and balancing life as you are, you really won't believe what your calendars will look like. And it's something to think about and use your true north to make considered decisions about where you spend your time.
You know, one of the questions that we often get, Wendy, is around, particularly from folks that want to make a career pivot. Mm-hmm. They will feel very compelled to get an in-school internship or part-time job just to try to start accruing what they feel is relevant experience. What's your recommendation on that? Do you think that that's something that folks should do, particularly in their first year?
I would say no. Everybody's situation is different, and some people actually may need to supplement their loans with some income. And there are people who do get part-time jobs or internships. But I think particularly in the first year, there's so much that's coming at you, and you want to make sure that you're engaging meaningfully and also very intentionally in the experience itself. And you don't want to lose out on those relationships and on leadership opportunities and engaging with faculty and staff and all the things that are available to you. So that's kind of my answer. I'd say, again, it depends, but please keep all that in mind, because again, as busy as you are now, you can't imagine what's coming.
Yeah, you only get right, but you're right. You only get one first semester of your MBA program, mm-hmm. And I understand there may be other things to spend time on. That's actually another question, though. Is what I've seen when folks come to campus, they see the array of clubs. I mean, Kellogg had 100 clubs. Mm-hmm. Columbia was in that boat. They were between 95 and 100 clubs. Other top schools have hundreds of clubs, mm-hmm. That represent all kinds of different energy-giving interests.
Right.
Is there an optimal number of clubs that folks should join?
Another really good question, and there is no cut and dried answer, but I will say that you can join as many clubs as you want, at least, depending on, I know some schools you have to pay to join a club, and in that case, you're going to want to use your money intentionally and join those clubs that pique your interest. But for example, at Kellogg and some other schools, you can join as many clubs as you want, and basically you're getting newsletters and hear about events, and what opportunities are available, and you can avail yourself to them or not. In terms of leadership roles, though, I don't think you can get leadership roles in clubs and conferences and committees, and there's usually no shortage of leadership roles. And I think you want to be really careful about not overcommitting. At Kellogg, we've seen a tendency for some people to overcommit and some people to undercommit. And that's, you want to take all the things that are important to you and make sure that you use your time wisely. And if you are committing to a leadership position, obviously you want to be successful, because it's a learning experience, and it can also be a very important part of your MBA experience. So no, but leadership, I'd say, 2 to 3 max.
Okay, that's really helpful framing, I think, for folks that are listening in today. is just to think about that range. So as people are getting ready over these next few months to join their MBA programs, what can they be doing to get themselves ready to become an engaged community member?
Well, I would say that I would research what resources are available to you at your particular school. Will you have an academic advisor? Have you engaged with the student life or student affairs team to see what resources are available to you?
So I think we might have lost you, Wendy, just in that last little bit. I heard
Sorry,
you. No, it's quite okay.
where did I
So we
stop?
heard about, if are you going to have an academic advisor? Who you're going to be working with there, like who are going to be the people around you that are resources?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just sort of in general, student affairs, academic advisors, career services people, and again, understanding what the offerings are, and what kind of wellness support that you can get, wellness, mental health, health kinds of things that are available to you in your experience there. There is a wealth of people who are there to um, ensure that you have the best MBA experience that you can. And you want to get to know those people because they can really help you optimize your experience.
So speaking of optimizing your experience, there are going to be some folks who are joining today or watching later that may be bringing a partner, spouse, or significant other with them to their MBA experience, and that's going to have a huge impact on their level of engagement and how they go about participating in the MBA experience. Could you talk a little bit? This is really something that you are such an expert in this area. How do you see families and partners fitting into their significant other's MBA experience? And how do you feel like one can integrate their partner into the MBA experience if they're not in the program?
Yeah, I think this is a really important and perhaps overlooked thing for students. If you are asking a partner to transition with you, to the US, if you're abroad or if you're moving from another city, your significant other is making a significant sacrifice to join you. And in some cases, people have to leave their jobs. For sure, they're leaving their community and their network. International partners may not be able to work and they need help sort of transitioning to the new, to the country, to the area in which you're living. They need to find ways in which to engage their intellectual and professional experience, even if they can't work. So I think that one, you want to make sure that you're cognizant of all the stuff you're drinking out of a fire hose, and your partner may be at home wondering when they're going to see you. And so you want to make sure that you are balancing your time with your family, your significant other and family, along with all the other activities that you're engaged in. And you want to find out what your particular school offers to the significant others. I know, excuse me, sometimes some schools allow you to sit in on classes, the partner to sit in on classes, and they may or may not be the classes that you're taking. At Kellogg, for example, and I think at many other schools, there are partners clubs that also provide a network for the people, for the partners who are looking to connect with other people in the same situation. I think the other thing, though, that's really important is having your partner have a person who is sort of their person. Again, you're going to be connected to so many people within your school who are there to help optimize your experience. And having an advocate and a person for your partner, I think, will ease their transition that much more. And So I, having worked with the significant other population for many years at Kellogg and helped them with their job search and networking and basically providing the activity or providing the services that the Career Services Center provides. Most schools, career management centers don't have the bandwidth to help your significant other. In fact, I, I don't know, there may be one or two schools that offers a little bit of support. So I have started a private practice. I'm Wendy Metter, consulting.com, and I'm specifically focused on the trailing partner. And so if you have a trailing partner, you're bringing your significant other to business school, feel free to contact me. I can help with that transition in many, many ways. And if your partner is not able to work, help them find meaningful volunteer work so that they're continuing to progress in their professional development, even though they can't work. So one other thing about that, your significant others are not used to being plus ones, and they often feel that way when they make a move with you for business school or any professional school, because we know that they're as talented and as bright and as ambitious in many ways as you are. And so making sure that they're taken care of will assure that your experience is that much greater.
Yeah, it's so important that partners, spouses, and significant others, that they feel somehow or another grounded in their own careers, that they're not just putting things on hold and just trailing, that they're continuing to make progress, and that they feel supported by their MBA partner.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to be happy if your significant other and family is not happy. It's just, you're part of a very important system, family system.
Yeah, agreed. But that notion that both careers, they're not going to be at the same place at the same time, but the careers of the MBA student and their significant other, that they are somehow or another complementary. It's something that's really important.
Agreed. So let's talk about careers, because obviously that's something that's very important to all of you. And from a career perspective, for the incoming MBA student, Michael, what are some of the things they should be thinking about?
So just like with academics, there were some very concrete steps that folks can take over the next few months. This is also true with careers. There are some things that folks can be thinking about and taking action on in the next few months. Every school has its own resume template. It all has the same basic information, but they are formatted slightly differently. And even though it sounds sort of trivial, the recruiters that work with schools will be able to spot the format of their target school pretty quickly. So getting the format, the template from your school, from the school that you're going to be going into in the fall, you can get that typically over the summer. And it's super helpful to just take the time over the summer and reformat your resume in your school's template. Why? Because it's not something that you really need a coach for. They can, when you start working with your career coach at your school, they can help you to massage content and really to look at what you're targeting and to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward. But you can absolutely take the time over the summer and just reformat your resume. And it's one more thing that's out of the way and that you're not having to spend time on. Career Leader is a self-assessment that many top business schools use. It focuses on understanding your interests, values, motivators, and skills. And then what it does is it takes a sample and matches those elements against where other MBAs have gone in the marketplace in the past and where they've been successful. So it will check your interests, values, motivators, and skills against those who had similar answers and where they landed, and provide you with recommendations on what might be a good starting point to research in terms of industry and function. It's certainly not meant to be prescriptive, but it is, if you're looking at a variety of areas and you don't know where to start, taking the Career Leader self-assessment is a really good starting point to figure out how what you bring to the table matches up with what's valued in different industries and functions. Identifying alumni just through LinkedIn, or if you have access, if your school allows early access, a lot of them don't. But if your school allows early access to your alumni database, that's great. If not, identifying some alum from your school via LinkedIn and reaching out to them to have quick conversations over the summer would be a great way for you to spend time. Ask them questions about what they might recommend or what they wish they knew when they were starting their MBA program that they now know. You're in that position, and so you can only benefit from some of that wisdom. And it's a great way to begin those relationships that you might rely on, whether they are mentors or they become industry or functional advocates, or just somebody who's invested in you. It's really, I think, a great way to start those conversations now.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really important as you anticipate what you're going to be focused on in terms of your career support or career direction is that you may be very clear about what it is you think you want to do when you're done with business school. But you will find out that there's, you only know what you know and you don't know what you don't know, and be prepared for some disorientation in the beginning. You usually have a couple months before you start getting inundated by recruiting events. But you don't, several things, you don't have to go to all of them, right, Michael?
No, I completely agree with that. You want to be more strategic than that.
And you may not know, you think you know what you want to do, and then you get confused, and then you think, well, maybe I should try all kinds of other things. But even so, you should be very strategic about the companies and roles and functions that you want to pursue, and know that that disorientation is normal. I think that's really important, because people get, again, it goes back to the herd mentality. You're not considering consulting, and then everybody decides they're going to do consulting, and then you suddenly are on the consulting train with everybody else, and halfway through you're like, well, wait, that isn't really what I want to do. So that's where the true north and your values and all the things that you're thinking about now will hopefully keep you from going too far astray from where you wanted to be. But you also want to keep your options a little bit open, at least in the beginning, and so that you can receive information and opportunities that you may not have known existed. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that. I think the folks that used to worry me the most when they started their MBA programs were the folks who said, I unequivocally know exactly what I want to do. Coming in and saying, I don't know what I want to do, to me, that made more sense. And it said that folks were open-minded. The challenge that I saw with folks being so targeted as saying, I know exactly what I want to do, and there is no way that I'm going to change my mind, is that they may have actually come across something during their program that was, in fact, a better fit for their skills or what was important to them. And because they were so fixed in their mindset, they weren't going to deviate. So I like the idea of going in with a plan and some values and some targets, but I agree, you can't know what you don't know. And so maintaining some level of openness and having those conversations with your classmates, with faculty members, with alumni, to fill in some of those gaps, I think makes for a more robust experience, and it makes for better choice making, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree.
Yeah. So Wendy, I wonder if you're agreeable, if I can go towards asking you some questions that I think folks might be interested in, and might help them to round out their knowledge base.
Sure.
So can you talk a little bit, we've gotten some questions in the past about developing relationships with faculty members. For some MBAs, it's not necessarily a top of mind thing to do. And yet, we've both heard and seen how value can be added by developing relationships. But can you talk a little bit about how you see the relationship, like working potentially with faculty and students in the MBA program?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you that some of the best experiences that people have is when they form a connection or personal relationship with a faculty member in their area of interest. Because faculty are faculty for a reason. They want to engage, and they're also busy doing research and other things, but they want to get to know you and they want to help you. And I think that for many can be a missed opportunity if you don't have that engagement. The engagement can be helpful to you in many ways, and not including your career. The faculty member in your area of interest is going to have incredible connections, and if you develop a relationship with them, they're going to want to go that much further in helping you. And know that these relationships are mutual. They're interested in getting to know you, just like you're getting interested in getting to know them. They want to know who you are, and they want to know about your experience, and they want to know how they can help you. So I think that can be an overlooked opportunity. So I'm glad that you brought it up, because I've seen incredible relationships developed over time, and it's been of both value to the faculty member and the student.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Is I think that it's really an opportunity if you make the time to go to office hours. It's probably one of the single most underutilized resources. As faculty members always set office hours every week, and we would see folks just not really take advantage of that. The other thing that I would point out, and this is, it may be more true for certain schools than for others, but schools like Kellogg, where it's proximate to Chicago, and Columbia, where it's in the middle of New York City, they also draw, so they have full-time faculty who are researchers and teachers, and they add so much value in terms of how to think about different problems. So I've heard so many stories about MBAs where they will go back to a professor once they're out working wherever they're working. They'll go back to a professor that they learned from to say, I'm working on a problem and it's similar to a case that we worked on in your class. Would you mind, like, could we talk through how I can approach this? And faculty members are tremendously generous about, and I think excited to be engaged. As you said, it's a two-way street. So there's an opportunity to engage with the full faculty. But in schools like Kellogg and Columbia that are proximate to or located in cities, you also have a tremendous number of practitioner faculty. These are folks that may be in some of the same jobs that you want to be in down the road. And because they love the thrill of teaching, they're not perhaps engaging so much in research. They really are there to teach what they know. And so, that's a whole other set of faculty that you can develop great relationships with, seek career advice from, and that can really add to your experience. I know that they were often, the practitioner faculty were some of the most well-liked and well-respected faculty members that students got an opportunity to take courses with.
Yeah, and I think the thing to remember with that is that it's not a one-way street. You're seeking advice from them or their knowledge, but they want to have a relationship with you because you're teaching them something. If you're dealing with a real life problem, you're helping them with their teaching by giving them problems that you're trying to solve. Because, it's true, tenured faculty, although many of them may consult, may not have the same exposure to day-to-day business problems like the adjunct faculty. So again, don't think of it as a bother, like you're bothering them. They're there because they're choosing to spend their career helping, working with students.
Yeah, agreed. So I have another question for you. Our slide before, where we talked about those three areas of academics, community, and careers being interrelated. Do you have a sense for whether or not, are they all busy all the time, each of those three buckets, or are there cycles where one is busier and one is more quiet? Do they overlap? I think the question that I'm asking is, how much Is this going to be challenging for students going into the MBA program? Are they having to operate all of those gears at top speed all of the time, or are there fluctuations at different points in the year from your experience?
I would say they do fluctuate, but I would say that most times all those things are going to be happening at the same time. I think the exception is, Career Management Center, you may not have as, sorry about that, may not have, there may be some peaks and valleys there during recruiting, but then there's recruiting prep, and maybe once you have a job, then that will slow down. I am so.
I wonder if that. No, it's okay. I'm wondering if it's my pizza delivery.
No, it's my it's my phone. At any rate, and academics, is there all the time, but obviously midterms and finals, it's a little bit more intense. And then in terms of community engagement, that can ebb and flow depending on your bandwidth. So I'd say all of it is happening all the time, but you may be leaning into one more than another at a particular point in time, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and
you will be drinking out of a fire hose for a long time.
Particularly that first semester, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard. You only have one first semester in an MBA program, and it's hard because you're learning everything for the first time, the content and the people and the activities that you're drawn to. And one of the probably strongest dynamics that I felt like I saw was just that fear of missing out. This is my one shot, to quote Eminem, and I don't want to miss it. And I really, I want to make sure that I don't get this wrong. And yet you can also get it wrong by overextending yourself and not doing justice to the things that you have chosen. So I do think that these cycles are going to run up against each other. And being able to say, to yourself, like, look, this is what I'm agreeing to before I get in the middle of it. This is the amount of time that I'm going to spend in each of these areas. And I'll be a little flexible, but when it comes time to cutting off, then I need to cut off and focus on the other areas. It's a good lesson in learning to be good enough instead of being great. And I feel like oftentimes some of the MBA experience in terms of how you spend your time is learning to be okay with, this is good enough. I've put in a good enough effort. It's now time for me to pivot. Otherwise, this other area is going to feel very neglected, and there's going to be a price for that.
Yeah, that FOMO thing is real, though. You have to sort of find out what your tolerance is, and I'm sure you have. Everybody has FOMO in their lives, but this is FOMO on steroids, because you're living in this very tight community of people, and you're seeing what everybody else is doing, and again, going back to your North Star, just making sure that you're being very clear and intentional about what you engage in, whether it's any of these areas that we've discussed. And unfortunately, there is no formula. It's different for every single individual, and that's some of the work you can do now to sort of get yourself as ready as you can be.
Right. And this also comes back to your board of directors, your accountability board, of like knowing that at times you're not gonna have the best perspective, the most objective perspective on what you're doing, and so being able to go back to folks who are on your side and saying, hey, how do you see me doing with this, can be invaluable. Yeah, I think that can be really helpful. One last question that I was going to ask you, Wendy, and this is coming from, we've worked with a number of students who increasingly, they want to give back. They want to be engaged, whether it's with their school or the university community or the town or city that their school is in. What are some of the better ways that you've seen folks get involved in giving back to different communities, whether it's volunteering or some other sort of social enterprise engagement? How have you seen that develop?
Yeah, there are so many ways of giving back within your MBA community, and that comes as leadership roles. It comes as admissions readers. It comes in lots of different ways, in helping with orientation. I think what's helpful though, if people can do a little bit of engagement within the local community that they're living. There's no shortage of volunteer opportunities, whether they're hands-on or whether they're helping a local organization solve a business problem. But I think if you can take yourself out of the bubble once a week or once a month or whatever, it's a way to give back to the community in which you're living. It's a good way to understand the community in which you're living. And then it is also a way to get some perspective. It takes you out of the bubble, because that bubble, can be a perspective losing bubble. And I think the more you engage a little bit externally, the happier you're going to be and the more grounded you're going to feel in wherever you are. What do you think, Michael?
I agree with you. It's hard to make time to engage outside, but there are creative ways to do it, particularly now that more and more organizations have gotten Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Meet friendly.
Mhm.
Some of what I've heard about during this past year and seen during this past year is, MBA students in the past, they might have gone to volunteer at a local elementary school, and now they were able to do it remotely. And it cuts down on the travel time, and it's different. It's a different quality, and I understand that, but there's still the opportunity to make a difference in a kid's life in that way. And so I think that's something to think about too, is that balance of how do you get outside that bubble in a sustainable way so that you are getting that sense of perspective,
Yeah.
but that you are also able to maintain it throughout the course of your semester, your year, your experience in the program.
Yeah. Again, it's another whole area that you have to figure out how to engage in and maintain a balance and a holistic kind of experience, so that you're walking away from your MBA checking the boxes of the things that you hope to get out of the experience.
Mhm.
And in terms of volunteering, you don't want to volunteer to check the boxes. If you're going to volunteer, however you're volunteering, you're doing it because the reason to do it is because you want to give back. That's one thing that's shouldn't be a check the box, because if it's a check the box, then it probably isn't meaningful to you or to whoever you're serving.
Right, right. It's not high school where you're trying to pad your resume anymore, right?
Exactly.
Good,
Exactly.
good.
Yeah.
We want to thank you for spending time with us. We hope that this has been a helpful, informative period. And I don't know, Wendy, if there's any last little bit of advice as we wrap up, whether it's to MBAs or to trailing partners as they begin this journey. Anything else that you want folks to know as we finish up?
I would say that you're about to embark on an amazing journey, and it's as overwhelming as it can feel. It's also exciting and can be life-changing. And I just hope that you will take advantage of the resources that are available to you, and that it's a great ride for you. And again, if you have a partner who is going to be making a transition of any kind, I am available for consultations. Kellogg, as I said, I was doing that at Kellogg, and I will be joining Kellogg again to continue to support the partner community. And again, you may want to check to see what resources are available to you at your school.
I will tell you from experience, having had the pleasure of working with Wendy during my time at Kellogg and now again with Fortuna, that she is like world famous for this. She was leading in this area when nobody else was even giving a thought to trailing partners and significant others. And so if this is an area that raises questions for you, or you just want to bounce ideas off and get some sense of how to go about this in a way that's mutually beneficial, I'd strongly recommend that you reach out to Wendy at wendymentorconsulting.com. and just schedule some time. I think you'll only benefit from it. If you are interested in anything related to MBA admissions, MBA careers, anything of that nature, we really want you to reach out to us at info@fortunaadmissions.com. We would be really happy to set up free consultations for you to help you to make what we both said we were passionate about, which is informed decision-making as you approach this journey. We have lots of stuff online, so you can take a look at some of the recorded interviews and other sessions that we have that, again, hopefully help you to round out your knowledge base so that you feel like you go into this MBA journey fully armed and fully ready to be successful. With that, we want to thank you again. We're hopeful that the next part of your journey is well informed and successful, and we will look forward to seeing you in a future session. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.